This is our absolute final story. We have only 15 days left to reach 100 subscribers, and we are so close to our goal. This is the last chance, the final push, the moment that determines whether this channel survives or disappears forever. If you have loved any of our stories, if you have felt anything watching these tales of courage and magic and transformation, please subscribe right now. This is not a request. This is a desperate plea. Click that subscribe button immediately. Share this video with every single person you know. Tag your friends. Post on social media. Send it to family members. Everywhere. Comment below and tell us this channel matters to you. We need 100 subscribers in 15 days or everything ends. All these stories, all this passion, all this magic, gone unless you help us. Subscribe now, share massively, comment urgently. This is it. Our last story, our final chance, our ultimate plea. Help us achieve our dream. Subscribe right now before it's too late. Now, let's begin our final epic tale. In the Crimson Mountains, where dragons had nested for 10,000 years, a single law governed the survival of hatchlings. Only the strong shall live. Dragons were apex predators, creatures of such immense power and magic that they ruled the skies unchallenged. But that power came at a cost. Dragons laid few eggs, perhaps one clutch every century, and only the strongest hatchlings survived to adulthood. It was nature's way of ensuring that dragonkind remained powerful, that weakness was culled before it could spread. When a dragon egg hatched to reveal a hatchling with any significant defect, tradition was clear. The parents would leave the defective young to die of exposure, then focus their energy on producing a stronger clutch in the next century. It was not considered cruel, but practical. Mercy in dragon culture was what you showed to the strong by not burdening them with the weak. This was the world into which Ember hatched. She emerged from her egg in the ancient nesting grounds of the Crimson Mountains, in a cave that had housed dragon clutches since before humans learned to speak. Her mother, Scarletfire, was a massive red dragon of ancient lineage and fearsome reputation. Her father, Shadowclaw, was equally formidable, a black dragon whose very name made lesser creatures flee. They had waited 80 years for this clutch. 2 eggs, which was unusually generous. They had high hopes for powerful offspring who would carry their bloodline forward into the next age. The first egg hatched to reveal a perfect specimen, a male dragon with gleaming crimson scales, powerful wings, and a roar that shook the mountain even at only hours old. They named him Pyraxis, and both parents looked on him with fierce pride. Then the second egg hatched. Ember was smaller than her brother from the moment she broke free from her shell. Her scales, instead of the expected crimson or black, were a strange copper-gold color that neither parent had ever seen in their bloodline. But most damning of all, her left wing was malformed, the bones twisted and incomplete, the membrane torn and unable to spread properly. A dragon that could not fly was no dragon at all. Scarletfire looked at her daughter with an expression that was not quite pity, but close to it. "A broken wing," she said quietly. "She will not survive a week even if we try to care for her. Better to end it quickly than to let her suffer." "Wait," Shadowclaw said, studying the small hatchling more closely. "Look at her eyes. Look at how she struggles to stand despite the pain. There is fire in this one. Perhaps—" "A dragon that cannot fly is useless," Scarletfire interrupted firmly. "You know this. We both know this. Keeping her alive would be cruel, not kind. She would watch her brother soar while she remained earthbound. She would know shame every day of her life. Let her go, Shadowclaw. We will produce another clutch in a century, a stronger one." "I want to live," a small voice said. Both parents froze. Dragon hatchlings did not typically speak for months. They communicated through instinct and gesture, not words. But Ember, only hours old, had spoken clearly in the ancient dragon tongue. "I know I am broken," Ember continued, her voice shaky but determined. I can feel that my wing is wrong, but I want to live. Please, do not leave me. I will find a way to be useful, even if I cannot fly. Please." Scarlet Fire's expression hardened. "This makes it worse, not better. A hatchling that speaks too early is often weak in other ways, compensating for physical inadequacy with premature mental development. It is another sign of defect. Or a sign of exceptional intelligence," Shadowclaw argued, though his voice lacked conviction. He knew his mate was right by dragon standards, but there was something in Ember's eyes, a determination that reminded him of his own youth, his own struggles to prove himself. "You are too soft," Scarlet Fire said. "You know what must be done. I will not be swayed by sentiment." She turned away from Ember and focused her attention on Pyraxis, who was already attempting to flap his wings, already showing the strength and coordination that dragons prized. Shadowclaw looked at Ember for a long moment, conflict clear in his ancient eyes. "I am sorry," he said finally. "You were not meant for this world, but you spoke well, hatchling. In another life you might have been great." He turned away too, following his mate to where Pyraxis was beginning his first attempts at walking. Ember was left alone in the corner of the nesting cave, too small and weak to even reach her parents, her broken wing dragging uselessly beside her. She should have died that first night. The mountains were cold, and dragon hatchlings needed the warmth of their parents' fire to survive. But Ember crawled with her 3 good limbs, 2 legs and 1 working wing, toward a thermal vent in the cave floor where volcanic heat rose from below. She pressed herself against the warm stone and refused to give up. She should have died of starvation within 3 days. Her parents fed Pyraxis but brought nothing for her, and hatchlings needed meat to grow strong. But Ember found insects in the crevices of the cave, caught them with surprising speed and cunning, and sustained herself on prey that would have been beneath a normal dragon's notice. She should have died of despair when Pyraxis learned to fly at 2 weeks old, launching himself from the cave entrance and soaring on the thermal currents while their parents cried out in joy and pride. But instead, Ember watched and learned. She studied how her brother moved, how he used the wind, how he positioned his wings, and though she could not fly, she understood the principles. She learned to use her broken wing as a weapon instead of a liability. The twisted bones were sharp, and she practiced striking with them until she could hit targets with precision. She learned to move fast on 3 limbs, developing a strange but effective combat style that no other dragon could predict. She learned magic. Dragons all possessed innate magical abilities: fire breath, resilience to injury, longevity. But most dragons never studied magic deeply because their physical power made it unnecessary. Ember, who could not rely on flight or size or traditional combat, threw herself into magical study with desperate intensity. She found ancient runes carved into the deepest parts of the nesting cave, markings left by dragons from ages past. She taught herself to read them, then to understand the magic they described. She learned spells for enhancing strength, for creating shields, for manipulating the elements in ways beyond simple fire-breathing. By 6 months old, Ember could cast protective barriers that even her father's flames could not penetrate. By a year, she had learned to levitate objects, including herself, for short distances, a crude substitute for flight, but better than nothing. Her parents noticed, of course. It was impossible not to notice when the hatchling they had abandoned began demonstrating magical abilities they themselves did not possess. But they did not know what to do with this information. "She lives still," Shadowclaw observed one evening, watching Ember practice spell formations in the corner of the cave. "Against all expectation, she survives." "Survival is not the same as thriving," Scarlet Fire replied. "Look at her, small, malformed, forced to compensate with tricks and cleverness. She is not a proper dragon. She is an embarrassment to our bloodline. She is our daughter," Shadowclaw said quietly. No, Scarlet Fire said firmly. She is a mistake we should have corrected months ago. I will not acknowledge her as kin. Peraxis is our child. He is strong, perfect, everything a dragon should be. That broken thing in the corner is nothing to me. Ember heard every word. She had excellent hearing, another sense that had sharpened to compensate for her inability to fly. She felt the rejection like a physical wound, but she did not cry out. She simply returned to her studies, to her exercises, to her determination to survive. If they would not love her, then she would make them respect her. If she could not be the daughter they wanted, she would become something they could not ignore. When Ember was 2 years old, still a juvenile by dragon standards, but old enough to have developed personality and power, disaster struck the Crimson Mountains. A band of dragon hunters arrived, the most dangerous kind, not opportunistic warriors seeking glory, but organized professionals equipped with ancient weapons specifically designed to kill dragons. They had ballistae that could pierce dragon scales, nets woven with magic-resistant chains, and worst of all, a Dragonbane Knight, a warrior who had killed at least 10 dragons and had been granted powers specifically for hunting dragonkind. The hunters attacked at dawn, when dragons were often sleeping after a night of hunting. They struck Scarlet Fire first, bringing her down with nets and ballista bolts before she could properly take flight. Shadowclaw fought valiantly, killed several hunters with his flame, but was eventually overwhelmed by coordinated attacks and the Dragonbane Knight's enchanted sword. Peraxis, panicked and inexperienced, tried to flee, but was shot down mid-flight, crashing into the mountainside with arrows in his wings. Ember, who had been deeper in the cave studying ancient texts, heard the commotion and rushed to help. She emerged to find her family, the family that had rejected her, in desperate danger. The logical response would have been to flee, to let the family who had abandoned her die, to escape while the hunters were occupied, to survive at any cost. That was what dragon nature would dictate, survival of the individual over loyalty to those who showed no loyalty to you. But Ember had never been a logical dragon. She launched herself at the hunters with everything she had learned over 2 years of desperate study. Spells flew from her claws, fire that burned hotter than normal dragon flame, ice that froze weapons and shattered armor, barriers that blocked incoming arrows. The hunters, expecting another young dragon to easily subdue, found themselves facing something entirely different. Ember could not fly, so she fought from the ground with brutal efficiency. Her broken wing, which hunters assumed was a vulnerability, became a weapon. The sharp, twisted bones caught opponents off guard, impaling one hunter who got too close. She was small, so she was fast. She was weak by dragon standards, so she was clever. She could not overpower the hunters, so she outmaneuvered them. The Dragonbane Knight, recognizing the primary threat, turned from Shadowclaw to engage Ember. He was a formidable warrior, his enchanted sword capable of cutting through dragon scales. His armor warded against magic. They fought for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The knight was skilled, experienced, powerful. But Ember was desperate, creative, and fighting for something more important than her own life. She was fighting for family that had never claimed her, for dragons who had abandoned her, for the simple, stubborn refusal to let them die when she could do something about it. She fainted with a fire blast, then struck with ice when the knight dodged. She created barriers not to protect herself, but to redirect his attacks into other hunters. She used her broken wing to parry his sword, the twisted bones catching the blade and wrenching it from his grip. When the knight was disarmed, Ember did not kill him. Dragon Code prohibited killing helpless opponents. Instead, she roared, a sound amplified by magic, a challenge and a warning that echoed across the mountains. The remaining hunters, seeing their leader defeated and half their number dead or wounded, made the wise decision to retreat. They grabbed what wounded they could and fled. leaving behind the Dragonbane knight who Ember held pinned with one claw and a magical barrier. "You fight with honor," the knight said, breathing heavily. "Unusual for a dragon, especially one so young. What are you called?" "Ember," she said, "and I am letting you live because dragon law demands it. But if you return to hunt my kin, I will not show mercy again." She released him, and the knight slowly gathered his weapons and retreated, looking back at her with an expression that might have been respect. When the hunters were gone, Ember turned to her family. Her parents were wounded but alive, her brother unconscious but breathing. She worked quickly, using healing magic she had learned from the ancient texts, stanching wounds, setting broken bones, drawing poison from ballista tips. It took hours of focused magical work, draining Ember almost completely of strength. But when she was finished, her family would live. They would recover fully, given time. Scarletfire was the first to wake. She looked at Ember with an expression the small dragon had never seen before. Confusion mixed with something that might have been shame. "You saved us," Scarletfire said quietly. "After we abandoned you, after we refused to acknowledge you, you risked your life for ours. Why?" "Because you are my family," Ember said simply, too exhausted to guard her words. "You are my mother, my father, my brother. You did not want me, but I am still yours. I could not let you die." Shadowclaw woke next. He looked at Ember, then at the carnage around the cave, then back at his daughter. "You fought the hunters, all of them, alone." "I had no choice," Ember said. "You were all unconscious or captured. Someone had to fight. A dragon that cannot fly," Shadowclaw mused. "A hatchling we left to die. Yet you survived, you learned, you grew strong enough to defeat enemies that nearly killed us. How?" "I refused to leave," Ember said. "I refused to die. I refused to accept that being broken meant being worthless, so I found other ways to be strong." Paraxis woke last. His wings bandaged with strips of cloth Ember had torn from the fallen hunters. He looked at his sister with wide eyes. "You saved me. I watched you fight. You were amazing." "I was desperate," Ember corrected. "There is a difference." "Is there?" Paraxis asked. "You moved faster than I could fly. You used magic I did not know existed. You defeated a Dragonbane knight with a broken wing and half my size. That is not desperation. That is skill." Scarletfire stood slowly, testing her healing wounds. She walked to where Ember sat, exhausted and small and broken-winged, and for the first time in 2 years, she looked at her daughter with something other than disappointment or indifference. "I owe you my life," Scarletfire said formally. "Dragon Code requires that I acknowledge this debt. You saved me, your father, your brother. You defended our bloodline when we could not defend ourselves. That is worth more than flight, more than perfect wings, more than all the things I thought mattered. You do not owe me anything," Ember said quietly. "You are my mother. I could not let you die." But we left you to die," Scarletfire said, and there was pain in her voice now. "When you hatched broken, we abandoned you. We gave you nothing, no food, no warmth, no acknowledgement. By all rights, you should have died in your first week. Yet you survived. More than survived. You thrived in ways we never expected. How?" "I refused to leave," Ember repeated, and there was steel in her young voice now. "You abandoned me, but I would not abandon you. You rejected me, but I claimed you anyway. You said I was broken and worthless, but I decided my worth for myself. I am your daughter, whether you acknowledge it or not. I am a dragon, even if I cannot fly, and I refuse to let your rejection define who I could become." Silence filled the cave. Then Shadowclaw spoke, his voice thick with emotion that dragons rarely showed. "You are right. You are our daughter. You have always been our daughter. and we have been fools, dangerous, prideful fools, to reject you because you did not meet our expectations. You exceeded them in ways we were too blind to see." He bowed his head, a gesture of respect rarely given by dragons and almost never by a parent to a child. "I am sorry, Ember, for abandoning you, for ignoring you, for failing to see your worth. You deserved better than we gave you. Can you forgive us?" Ember looked at her father, then her mother, then her brother. She saw genuine remorse in their eyes, genuine recognition of their failure. She could reject them now, could tell them that their acknowledgement came too late, that 2 years of abandonment could not be erased by pretty words. But Ember had spent 2 years proving she was not ruled by bitterness or spite. She had saved them not for reward or recognition, but because it was right. She had refused to let their rejection poison her spirit. "I forgive you," she said simply. "Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger would make me small. I refuse to let physical brokenness define me. I will not let emotional damage define me either." Scarlet Fire made a sound that might have been a sob if dragons sobbed. She lowered her massive head and touched it gently to Ember's small one. "From this day forward, you are not just my daughter, but my pride. I will tell every dragon who asks that my strongest child is the one who was born broken, that she survived what should have killed her, learned what we could not teach her, and became powerful in ways we never imagined. You honor our bloodline more than your perfect brother ever could." "Hey!" Peraxis protested, but there was no real hurt in it. "I mean, she is pretty amazing. But I am still cool too, right?" The tension broke, and for the first time in 2 years, Ember felt what she had thought she would never feel: the warmth of belonging, of family, of being wanted. Over the following years, Ember continued to grow in power and wisdom. Her family, no longer blind to her worth, supported her studies and celebrated her achievements. Shadowclaw taught her dragon history and the old laws. Scarlet Fire shared hunting techniques that could be adapted for ground combat. Peraxis became not just her brother, but her closest friend, often asking her to teach him the magic she had mastered. Word spread through dragonkind about the broken-winged dragon who had defeated a Dragonbane knight, who had saved her family despite being abandoned, who had proven that worth was not measured by physical perfection, but by strength of spirit. Some dragons scoffed. Some maintained that Ember was an aberration, that the old ways of culling the weak were still correct. But others began to question: if a dragon with a broken wing could become powerful through intelligence and determination, what did that say about their assumptions of weakness? How many other defective hatchlings had been abandoned who might have become extraordinary given the chance? When Ember reached adulthood at 50 years old, still appearing young and small by dragon standards, her broken wing never fully healing, but her magic and combat skills formidable, she made a decision that would change dragon culture forever. She established a sanctuary in the Crimson Mountains for rejected dragon hatchlings. Any dragon born with defects who would normally be abandoned was welcome. Ember would teach them what she had learned: that different did not mean inferior, that limitations could be transformed into advantages, that worth was inherent and not granted by others' approval. Many traditional dragons protested, but Scarlet Fire and Shadowclaw, humbled by their own mistakes, supported their daughter publicly. Peraxis, now a powerful dragon in his own right, helped defend the sanctuary against those who would destroy it. And slowly, hatchling by hatchling, Ember built a community of dragons who had been rejected for various defects: missing claws, mismatched scales, unusual sizes, any deviation from the expected norm. She taught them combat, magic, survival. She taught them that they mattered. Not all survived, not all thrived. But enough did to prove Ember's point. That dragon culture had been wasting potential for millennia by discarding anything imperfect. 100 years after Ember hatched, the Dragon Council, a gathering of the eldest and most powerful dragons in the world, called a formal conclave to address what they called the Ember Question. Ember attended, no longer the small, broken hatchling, but a formidable adult dragon whose magical prowess was respected and feared. She stood before the council, her copper-gold scales gleaming, her broken wing held proudly rather than hidden, and made her case. "For 10,000 years we have culled the weak," Ember said. "We have abandoned hatchlings who did not meet our standards of perfection. We told ourselves this made us strong. But what if we were wrong? What if we have been throwing away our greatest potential? Dragons with defects are liabilities," one ancient council member argued. "They cannot hunt properly, cannot defend territory, cannot pass on strong bloodlines." "I was born with a broken wing," Ember said. "By your logic, I should have died 2 years after hatching. Instead, I am here, having defeated a Dragonbane knight at age 2, having mastered magic that dragons 3 times my age cannot comprehend, having saved my parents and brother from hunters that nearly killed them. Tell me, council member, which of your perfectly formed descendants have accomplished as much?" Silence greeted her challenge. "Defects force adaptation," Ember continued. "I could not fly, so I learned magic. I was small, so I became fast. I was abandoned, so I became independent. Every limitation I faced made me find creative solutions. I am not strong despite my broken wing. I am strong because of it. It forced me to become more than I would have been if I had been born perfect." "You are an exception," another council member said. "Not all defective hatchlings would have your determination." "True," Ember acknowledged. "Some would not survive, some would not thrive. But that is true of perfect hatchlings as well. The question is not whether all will succeed, but whether some will succeed in ways that benefit all dragonkind. And the answer is yes. I have proven that. My students at the sanctuary are proving it every day." "What do you propose?" the council leader asked. "That we abandon our traditions entirely? That we keep every weak hatchling regardless of their chances?" "I propose we give them a choice," Ember said. "I propose that instead of leaving defective hatchlings to die, we offer them to my sanctuary. Let them be trained, educated, given a chance to prove themselves. Those who cannot adapt will fall naturally, but those who can adapt will strengthen dragonkind in ways we have not seen for millennia. Magic, strategy, creativity. These are the advantages we have been discarding. Let us reclaim them." The council debated for 3 days. Some argued passionately for tradition. Others, swayed by Ember's example and the undeniable success of her students, argued for change. In the end, the council voted narrowly to support Ember's proposal. Dragon parents would still have the right to abandon defective hatchlings, but those hatchlings would be taken to Ember's sanctuary rather than left to die. They would be given a chance. It was not perfect. It was not full equality or acceptance, but it was progress. As Ember left the council chambers, Scarletfire caught up to her. "You did well, daughter. You have changed our people's course. That takes courage most dragons never find." "I learned courage from refusing to die," Ember said. "From surviving when survival should have been impossible. From choosing to live when death would have been easier." "You learned it from being extraordinary," Scarletfire corrected. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it, but I see it now. You are the greatest dragon I have ever known, broken wing and all." Ember looked at her mother, at the pride and love in her eyes, and felt a peace she had not known she was seeking. "I forgave you years ago, but thank you for saying it, for meaning it." "Do you ever regret it?" Scarletfire asked. "Not being able to fly? Watching other dragons soar while you remain bound to earth?" Ember was quiet for a moment, considering the question honestly. Then she smiled. "Sometimes. Flight is beautiful, and I will never know it. But I have known other beauties. I have mastered magic that flying dragons never bother to learn. I have saved lives that would have been lost. I have built something meaningful from my limitations. Would I trade my broken wing for a working one if I could? Perhaps, but I would not trade what the broken wing taught me: the resilience, the creativity, the absolute refusal to accept that broken means worthless. She spread her wings, one perfect, one twisted and malformed, and they caught the light, casting shadows that were beautiful in their asymmetry. I am not perfect, Ember said. I will never be perfect. But I am enough. I have always been enough. I just had to refuse to leave until the world recognized it. And there, in the Crimson Mountains, where she had hatched broken and abandoned, where she had survived against all odds, where she had transformed her limitations into legendary strength, Ember stood as living proof that worth is not granted by others, but claimed by those brave enough to refuse to give up. Born with a broken wing, she should not have lived. But she refused to leave, refused to die, refused to accept that brokenness meant she was less than whole. And in refusing, she changed not just her own fate, but the fate of every dragon that would come after her. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to believe the world when it tells you you are worthless. Sometimes surviving when you should not is the most revolutionary act imaginable. And sometimes being broken is the beginning of becoming extraordinary. The end.